The smell of garlic and fire-grilled lamb lingered in the air. Jason Statham stepped through the back entrance of the restaurant he technically owned but hadn't entered in over a year. He kept the door quiet as it shut behind him. No entourage, no spotlight. Just a man in a plain black jacket, blending into the kind of place most people forgot how to appreciate. It was late. Service was winding down. Staff were clearing counters. Lights were soft, warm. He didn't come for attention. He came for confirmation. Jason had built this place with silence, financed it anonymously, hired the right people, then stepped back. No press release. No ribbon cutting. Just a private name on a deed and an understanding with the manager. Build something real or shut it down. He hadn't been back since. Until tonight. He stepped down the narrow hallway toward the kitchen, boots silent on the concrete floor. His eyes scanned every corner, not for faults, for pulse. He wanted to feel the place, hear how it breathed when no one was performing, but halfway down the hall he froze. The sound drifted in from the storage room. A voice, gruff, honest, irritated. It belonged to the janitor. The man was speaking to someone, low but sharp. Jason didn't move. He stood still as the words echoed out from the cracked door. Saying the boss was better than the press made him out to be. Said he didn't care if people laughed at the idea of a millionaire scrubbing his own counters. Said men like Jason didn't need cameras to clean up their messes. They just did it and moved on. Jason blinked once. The janitor kept going. Told someone that the man who ran this place gave people a second chance without asking for gratitude. That he kept paying salaries during lockdown when the whole street went dark. That no one needed to know his name for it to matter. Jason stayed frozen. Because this wasn't part of the plan. He'd expected numbers, maybe faces. He didn't expect loyalty, not like this, and the voice on the other end. Another staff member, young, bitter, saying maybe the guy was just doing it for guilt. Maybe he used the place to wash his conscience. The janitor laughed, not cruelly. He said maybe, but he reminded her that Jason never asked for thanks, only honesty. Jason took a single step back, then turned away from the door and walked back down the hall. He didn't want them to know he heard. Not yet. Because now he needed to remember how it all started. 12 months earlier, Jason stood in a dusty courtyard in East London, staring at the carcass of what used to be a restaurant. It had been called Marco's, a steakhouse with overpriced wine and a reputation for being forgettable. The pandemic crushed what little life it had left. Now the windows were smashed and the paint curled like skin off sunburn. Jason didn't look at the decay. He saw potential, but not the kind you could flip and sell, the kind that stayed. He made a call to a contact in Marseille, a chef who owed him a favor and knew how to run a kitchen like a battlefield. He flew him in, put him up, gave him cash, no questions. Then he called another friend, a woman who once ran logistics for a rescue ops unit before being blacklisted by a defense contractor. She became the operations lead. Then he found her, an old cleaner named Alma who had once mopped his floors back when he trained underground. She didn't ask for the job. He gave it anyway. Each hire was chosen because of something unspoken, people who had been passed over, who'd lived under labels, who just needed space. Jason funded the rebuild, but he never showed his face. Instead, he had Calder, a man from his past, sign the ownership paperwork through a front trust. The restaurant opened quietly 4 months later under a new name, Holdfast. No ribbon, no interviews, just food, and people came, not influencers, locals, families. Broken people, whole people, loud people, quiet ones. The kind who ate with their hands and didn't care how you looked. Jason never stepped through the front. He sat in a car across the street sometimes, watched the lights, watched the staff take out trash at midnight, watched the dishwasher guy walk home alone every night. And every week, he had Calder send in full pay plus 10% bonus split across the team. No one ever asked why. Then the press found out. A tabloid ran a story. Is this secret London bistro run by Jason Statham? The article wasn't mean. But it was wrong. It made it seem like a vanity project that burned more than Jason expected. Because it wasn't about image. It was about weight. He thought about stepping in, shutting it down. But Calder said no one on staff cared. Said the janitor told the kitchen team not to believe everything they read. That's when Jason decided he'd visit, quiet, unseen. And now here he was, frozen in a hallway, hearing a man who barely made minimum wage defend him like a brother. Jason didn't know what to do with that. So he did what he always did. He stepped back into the dark, went through the service exit, got into a plain black sedan parked 3 blocks down, and drove, not because he didn't care, but because he cared too much, because loyalty like that didn't happen by accident. And if that janitor believed in him, he needed to remember what it meant to earn that kind of trust again. Jason Statham didn't go back the next night. He waited, because he didn't want to act on emotion. That had been the mistake in his early days. The moment someone showed loyalty, he'd step in, reveal himself, try to honor it right away. But experience taught him something colder. Loyalty doesn't want attention. It wants stability, quiet acknowledgement, protection. So Jason waited 4 nights. Then returned, same black jacket, same route, same time. Only this time he didn't head for the back hallway. He sat across the street inside a rusted-out tea shop with foggy glass and cracked leather booths, ordered a cup of something bitter. Sat at the farthest table, eyes trained on the entrance of Holdfast, watched who arrived, watched who stayed late. The janitor, Alma, didn't leave until 2:11 a.m. She locked the side gate herself, looked around once, stretched her back, then walked 2 blocks east without checking her phone. Quiet strength. Jason followed at a distance, not for surveillance, for rhythm. She passed the bakery, tapped the window gently. The overnight baker gave her a thumbs up. She smiled once, just enough. Jason didn't approach. He just memorized the cadence of her steps. The next day he visited Calder, showed him a list, asked for full personnel files, not to interrogate, to understand. Because the more he thought about that night, the more he realized something was wrong, not with Alma but with the structure itself. Jason had built the restaurant on good faith, but faith wasn't enough anymore. He needed to test it. That night he returned a 3rd time, and this time he went in, through the front, unannounced. The maitre d' blinked when he saw him. Froze, hesitated, then nodded and led him to a table in the back, near the kitchen doors. Jason didn't speak, didn't introduce himself. He just watched. The restaurant moved like a living organism. Waitstaff flowed through tight corridors without collisions. The head chef barked softly from behind the steel pass, hands orchestrating a rhythm that reminded Jason of pre-op command briefings. Precision in chaos. And the janitor, she wasn't cleaning tonight. She was seated 3 tables down, wearing a loose cardigan, hair tied back, sipping soup. Jason watched as one of the younger chefs came over and sat beside her. Their conversation was casual, layered, respectful. At one point the chef leaned in, frustrated, said something intense. Alma didn't flinch. She responded slowly, firmly. Jason read her lips. She said, "Let the food do the talking. Ego ruins more dishes than fire ever will." He looked down at his plate, untouched, then stood up, slipped out before dessert, didn't pay. No one asked him to. He left a folded napkin on the chair. "Thank you for keeping this place alive." No signature. 3 days later, a problem surfaced. Jason saw it in the numbers first. Supply receipts were off by 2%. Not a lot, but enough to indicate either misreporting or middleman inflation. Calder traced it back to a procurement assistant working off hours with a third-party supplier. Jason didn't fire him. He invited him to meet, anonymously, in the alley behind the kitchen. The assistant showed up late, nervously adjusting his sleeves. He didn't recognize Jason right away, until Jason asked why loyalty only lasts until profit shows up. The kid stammered. Said it wasn't about betrayal, said he needed the money. That rent had gone up, that no one would notice. Jason listened, then handed him a note, inside. A revised contract with a 12% pay raise and a condition. Shadow the janitor for 3 nights and learn what integrity feels like. The kid folded the paper, didn't speak, just nodded. Jason walked away. No punishments, just direction. But word spread, not about what happened, no one leaked that. Word spread that something invisible was watching now, that people who thought no one saw were wrong. The tone of the restaurant sharpened, not with fear, with focus. 2 weeks later, Alma received an envelope in her locker. Inside, a simple letter. 3 sentences. "You're not just the janitor. You're the anchor. Teach the others what that means." She read it 3 times. Then showed up 2 hours early the next day. Started writing shift reports in the back room. Documented more than cleaning. She wrote about respect. About how one of the waiters helped her carry a box up the stairs without being asked. About how the dishwasher covered a broken tray and didn't complain. She started highlighting moments, not mistakes. Jason read every report. He never replied. But the staff changed. The restaurant's rhythm improved. customer wait time dropped. Staff lateness dropped. Tips rose. Jason didn't need credit, he just needed confirmation. But then came the letter, anonymous, left in Calder's mailbox, typed unsigned. It accused the restaurant of favoritism, said the janitor was overstepping, said a quiet power was forming behind the scenes. It used words like cult, manipulation, intimidation. Jason didn't get angry, he got curious. He asked Calder to lock the staff entrance for one night, to reroute every team member through the front. Then Jason sat in the host booth with the register tablet, hat low, back turned. He didn't speak, he just listened. Some staff greeted him, others didn't notice. But one voice paused, said quietly, "Is he watching again?" Jason didn't turn around, he waited. That voice, female, mid-20s, walked on, but the tone was there. Fear, not of injustice. Of being held accountable. That was the crack. Jason stepped into the prep kitchen an hour later, mid-shift. No uniform, no warning. Alma saw him first, her eyebrows lifted, not in surprise but in recognition. Jason nodded. Told her quietly, "Show me what loyalty actually looks like in a storm." She didn't ask what he meant, she just turned, and led him toward the walk-in freezer. Behind the cold steel she pulled open a second folder, one Jason didn't know existed. Inside, records, not files, moments. She had been documenting internal failures no one had confessed to, broken shipments, verbal slip-ups, anger in the back hallway, but she hadn't punished, she'd spoken. Taught, redirected, she never reported anyone, she just kept the standard alive. Jason looked at her for a long time. Then said, "This isn't cleaning," she replied. "This is protection." And in that moment he realized she wasn't just keeping the place alive, she was guarding the parts of it he couldn't see anymore, and maybe that's what he'd needed all along. Jason Statham didn't plan to return again. He'd seen enough. The system was intact. The people were stronger than he'd hoped. And the loyalty he'd overheard in a back room that first night had grown into something he didn't recognize, something he couldn't control, but also didn't want to. He was ready to disappear again. Until Calder called. A small protest had erupted online. Some influencer had accused the restaurant of manipulating staff into cult-like obedience. Said employees were too quiet, too loyal, too rehearsed. It was an attempt to stir attention, manufactured outrage for engagement. The story gained traction, and the camera crews started circling. Jason read the article once, didn't react. But when he saw a photograph embedded in the post, Alma, wiping a table, captioned "Face of the Silence," something shifted in him. They weren't attacking him. They were attacking what he believed in, what he built. So he showed up again, this time in daylight, wearing no disguise. Front entrance, noon sharp. The restaurant froze when he walked in. Servers stopped mid-step. A spoon clinked into a bowl. Alma was standing near the dish station. Her eyes caught him and didn't waver. No surprise. No questions. Jason walked straight to the middle of the room, turned, and addressed the staff. He didn't raise his voice, he didn't give a speech. He simply told them the truth, that the place was never about him. That he built it as a space for second chances, not for cameras. That Alma had guarded it better than he ever could. And that loyalty wasn't obedience, it was belief without begging. Some cried, others nodded. But the message settled into the walls like concrete hardening beneath paint. Then Jason did something unexpected. He picked up a tray and began working the floor for the rest of the day. He served meals beside the waiters, carried dishes, took orders, cleaned tables. Tourists stared, cameras peeked through the windows, but Jason didn't flinch. He wasn't performing. He was reminding. Alma moved beside him like a ghost, never too close, never too far. They worked in sync without needing eye contact. Two people who understood weight and carried it without complaint. Late afternoon, a young customer approached the register. Looked up at Jason and asked if he was the guy from the video. Jason paused, said, "Just someone helping out," and walked the kid back to his table with a smile that didn't need to be convincing. That night after closing, the staff stayed late. No one asked them to. They just did. They cleaned deeper, restocked better, organized the coolers like they were building something sacred. Jason watched it all from the prep counter, then stepped into the back hallway, the same one where he'd once frozen in place, overhearing the janitor speak his name. He stopped outside the same storage room. This time the door was wide open. Inside, Alma was sweeping slowly, head down, humming something soft. Jason didn't speak. He stepped in and picked up a second broom. Alma paused, didn't smile, just kept sweeping. They cleaned the room together. wordlessly, until the floor sparkled. When she turned to leave, Jason stopped her. He reached into his jacket and handed her a single brass key. She looked down at it, confused. Jason explained it wasn't for a locker. It was for the building. The deed had been transferred. Ownership papers signed. The restaurant was now under her name through a clean trust with full control. Her hands shook. She said nothing. Jason said, "This place needs a heart, and yours beats louder than mine ever did." She tried to give the key back. He didn't take it. He walked away. Next morning, Alma opened the place early, unlocked the door with the new key. The staff noticed the difference immediately, the weight of something larger resting in her pocket. But she didn't act different. She still swept the same, still made sure the dishwasher had a clean apron, still reminded people to check the back fridge. And when Jason didn't show up the next day, or the one after, they didn't panic, because they understood. Ghosts don't need to haunt forever. Sometimes they just need to know they're leaving something behind that won't fall apart. Weeks passed. The media noise died down. The influencer story disappeared, but the regulars stayed. They brought their kids, celebrated anniversaries, ate quietly under soft lights, and every once in a while a new employee would hear rumors about how the guy who used to mop the floors built the place. They'd laugh at first, until they saw the old photos, until they watched the staff speak about him with something gentler than reverence, and eventually they understood, because in a world full of noise, Jason Statham built something that spoke through silence. And every time someone raised a glass or laughed a little too loud inside those walls, it echoed, not in volume, but in legacy.